We'll talk about the storylines just a little bit. So we do have multiple storylines now. We know we started with 4 when we first came out. Now we have 10 storylines total, and storylines really are centered around a certain type, usually a disease process of some sort. So we have 10 storylines, we have over 90 simulations completed, and we have 10 serious games. We have many still in production that are in some level of completion. We're just kind of working through them. And a few that we're still left to kind of hash out a little bit that we'll talk about maybe towards the end of things. Because I do want to mention a couple of them are kind of cool. Our storylines released to this point, wound management, that was one of the first ones that we actually worked on. The media was already there for us. We didn't have a lot of choice as to what the media was, but we helped develop the curriculum around it and tried to figure out how to make this work for us. We did the therapeutic communication games. We have typical chest pain male and atypical chest pain female, end of life, pediatric pain, and then some of our newer releases are ones we actually designed the videos for. That's pediatric asthma, heart failure, we have OB, and we have newborn. And those are our latest scenario. We don't have as many released in those yet, but those are the ones that are kind of in levels of production as we go forward. We got pretty creative with some of those. Coming soon, and the thing I kind of want to mention a little bit, and we'll talk more about the end, is we're going to have some ventilator games, which is kind of exciting for me as a respiratory therapist. It's hard for students to practice on equipment that's really expensive in their home environment, so we are currently in production with Eris, and it's almost done. A customization, so there's actually a ventilator that we have on the iPad that they can take home and they can practice with. And that'll help with some other disciplines as well, like paramedics, EMTs, and even nursing can go home and kind of play around with this a little bit, and we'll kind of be able to highlight that later on, but it's a way for them to be able to use a ventilator at home in a very simple format to kind of practice the concepts there. And then we're also going to be working on some mashups, and what that means for us is now that we have all this great media and great videos and all these pictures and things that we found, how can we make this so that you as instructors can be more creative with the content? So we're going to try to put them together in pieces so that you can maybe create some of your own scenarios and curriculums around some of the media that we've already developed. So we're going to work on that too before we go.
So this is just a sample of a very first mashup that we put together, where instead of having to run through the teaching plan step by step, which we'll show you for a particular scenario, you have the option of making it your own by using the various QR codes. So
I have a quick question back about the games. So you had mentioned that it's taking a track of when they get things wrong or how, that kind of stuff. But you also then said that they could screenshot it. Do we have access to all those attempts in a different manner?
Well, the teaching plans are out there. The teaching plan tells you like how many they have to get wrong to get a certain question to a certain point. So it'll tell you when they send you that screenshot that if they got 3 stars, this is what it means and this is the points they achieved. So when you look at the teaching plan, it kind of walks you through that part if that's really what your question was.
are you thinking like track? Did they pick the wrong answer? So we should explain Eris a little bit too. Eris is the software platform that the iPads are using. The reason it was chosen, Charles was part of that too, is it's an open platform.
Open source, yeah.
Open source platform. So there's limitations using that software, and one of them is we can't, as each student goes in, we can't track what they did, or like we've asked, can we document within the iPad and things like that. And so keep in mind, that's one thing we have to emphasize, just like today, when you're using the iPad, it's all through the Wi-Fi. So whatever you're doing on that game goes through the Wi-Fi, goes down to Madison on their servers and comes back. And that's why it can't be tracked, because there's no way to go back to the servers and track it. But Wi-Fi truly matters with these iPads. So you keep that in mind, because that's when we talk later. That's one of the things we've learned that you always have to keep in mind. Just like I mentioned at conferences, that you have hundreds of iPads going, it's difficult.
So while you'll know at the end if they send you a screenshot how many they got wrong, you never know which ones of the questions they got wrong or right. So you just would know the final score at the end.
Thank you.
Yep.
I also want to mention too that all these storylines are evidence-based. So we've spent a lot of time researching the current evidence-based guidelines, current protocols. We've been using the UpToDate database. I don't know if anyone else uses that. Mayo is a standard of care at Mayo, and that's how we got involved in it. Now CBTC actually has it as part of their library, but it's updated, I think, quarterly with the most current research. So sometimes when you're running things, this is some feedback we got from our faculty, a protocol that we have in the scenarios might not exactly match what you see in your local agency, perhaps, but it is based on current standards of care. So you can explain, oh, let's go to the UpToDate resource and look it up and see what the what the evidence shows, so.
And it was up to date as of when we published it as well. We know for a fact that these are gonna become outdated eventually, but I mean, it's still, the value of it is there's something there and it still can be a good teaching tool. And we also, when we talk about, making sure they're evidence-based, we did use a lot of subject matter experts. So we're not experts in all of this by any means. We're experts in our field, but like Kim says, I'm not an OB nurse. So we did go out and find subject matter experts to help us walk through things so that we made sure it was not only up to date, from a journal standpoint and what's being done, but also from a practice standpoint and how this is actually run through. And that's what and these based off our subject matter experts from our local facilities, so it might be done a little differently somewhere else. Those are all good teaching points as well, I think, because we all know that things change over time. Like we said, the storylines decide what happens to an individual patient. There's a couple pictures up there of our current storylines. I really want to focus on this slide is talking about our levels. Kim kind of alluded to it earlier. Our storylines are divided into levels. Usually we have level 1 through 4 for each of the disciplines, but that's not always the case. It all depends on our numbers and what really is going to fit into the scenario as well. But really, if we have a level 1 storyline, it's for basic students. It's for beginning students, first semester typically, whether it's nursing or respiratory therapy or even EMT paramedic. It's the beginning students, that's their first novice level. It includes basic assessment, basic interventions, and then we go all the way through until we get to level 4, and that's your more advanced stuff. That's crisis management and intervention. These are for our fourth semester students. These are for the more advanced people as we go forward. So as we level these out, it really does tier well with the educational environment. And we did that purposely to make sure that it really aligned well with the curriculum, was easy to think about as you're going through and looking at things.
So from a nursing standpoint, you'll see in the teaching plans, each one of these levels are aligned with the courses for that semester. So first semester students, they're rarely doing much more than an assessment and maybe a basic PO med cast. Usually. Level 2 has more medications, maybe a little bit more content tied to nursing health alterations, for example. Level 3, there's always some kind of complication going on, so we're incorporating a lot of CHA-1 into that. And then level 4 is crisis and intervention. I do want to mention a lot of people think, one of the questions we get a lot is like, does level 4 automatically step through all these levels? No. Each one is a standalone scenario aligned to that.
Yes, you could totally pick up a level 4, having never seen level 1, 2, or 3. They don't always align. They don't always even have the same medications or the same scenario follow through. It's in the same storyline, but we may have decided that we wanted to go a different path with that crisis or intervention. Because if we went the same path all the time, we've learned really quickly that they always end up at the same spot if we always go this way. We want it to be a different type of crisis or intervention at some point. So they don't always match or line up at all.
And go ahead. The other term that I want to mention now, because this is another thing that gets confusing sometimes, are states. Now, I think a lot of us are already using that term within simulation. You start with state 1, students are doing their assessments, and then when you're ready, whatever trigger it is, you move to state 2. So we have those states within the levels. And what gets confusing is we have a level tab, and that was from when we first started within the iPad. So when you see the level tab and the iPad, that's really a state. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we will. And the other thing to keep in mind is like Kim said, is when we level these out, they are all aligned to Wisconsin state curriculum as much as possible. So we did align it to the courses there. I don't think our curriculum alignment sheet is quite up to date right now. It's one of the things on our list to kind of get up to date. But we have aligned it to the courses as best as possible based off the competencies for each discipline's curriculum. So if we go out to the website and we can maybe kind of show you where that is later, we can check off, like this scenario here lines up with this course, this course, this course, and this course based off the competencies in each of those courses.